I'd like to thank all of the new viewers who clicked on this video because of the title. Hate to break it to you, but you're probably going to be disappointed. And for those of you watching for the game, you're also going to be disappointed because Milky Princess is a pretty bad cartridge. But there's some interesting history around it. Let's jump back to 1985. The Famicom is busy making all of the money in Japan. Sega just keeps chugging along as a distant second-place console. And then behind them is the Super Cassette Vision. Epoch was in a dilemma. Video games were obviously hot, but their own were barely selling. But maybe there was a way to deal with this dilemma. Maybe, just possibly, there was an underserved market segment out there. A group of people who would like to play video games, but were turned off by the giant robots dominating on other platforms. And so, gentlemen, and I do mean just gentlemen because there's no way a woman was consulted here, I give you the Epoch Super Cassette Vision Ladies. The classic Super Cassette Vision reworked into this delightful pink color. It came in a lovely and functional pink vinyl carrying case, and even the AC adapter came in a pink box. On the left-hand side, you'll note space for your cartridges, and all of the previous Super Cassette Vision games have been redone in pink, though that's just a cardboard spacer. And of course, it's the version of the Cassette Vision that came with a pack-in game, Milky Princess. A game perfectly designed to appeal to women. That's right, we're not done with this yet. Now you might imagine that women were just lining up around the block to get their hands on the Super Cassette Vision Ladies. But it proved to be a bit of a disaster for Epoch. No one's entirely sure how poorly it performed, but estimates put it at less than 50,000 units. Personally, I've never even seen one for sale. Because you better believe if given the choice between the standard Super Cassette Vision and the Super Cassette Vision Ladies, I'm going to take the ladies every time. As for Milky Princess itself, well, there's a whole other story there. Because Milky Princess is the very first console game, or cartridge at least, that claims to be a fortune-telling device. It's a small genre that's going to start coming up more heavily in the next 2 years, but Epoch got there first. And they even got an endorsement for Milky Princess, from one Rene von Dahl Watanabe, or to use his real name, Kojiro Watanabe. Watanabe was an astrologer and New Age guru, or to put it more succinctly, a con man, and contained in Milky Princess are his fortunes for you. There are 3 different fortune-telling options here, and all of them require that you enter your date of birth as well as your blood type. The first one will tell you what you're supposed to be like, an old trick with astrology where you give out some generic enough description of a personality and anyone will say it applies to them. Next, you enter your information and the information for someone else, and it will tell you how compatible you are, in case you wanted your Cassette Vision Ladies to determine if you should be in a relationship or not. The final option is for your biorhythms, which, to briefly explain, since nobody's referenced that since the 1980s, was the idea that there were certain factors in your life that went up and down like a sine wave. Since no one could agree on what those factors were, or the frequency of those waves, it was even more obvious than the usual stuff that it didn't work at all. One thing about the fortune-telling is that due to the space limitations on the cartridge, all of the text is written in katakana, a type of Japanese script that's mainly used for loanwords. Even native Japanese speakers often find it difficult to read entire sentences in katakana, but the text here is also extremely slow. Katakana was often used in early games like this because of how angular it is. That made it easier to render at low resolutions. Now, there also is a game on the cartridge. Unfortunately, the game's kind of mediocre. It's not the worst thing I've ever played, and it does feel like they tried to spruce it up a little bit, but it winds up being pretty dull. There are 4 modes here, but all of them play the exact same. It just changes the number of players. In the game, you can maneuver Milky Princess freely around the screen. From the left and right edges, symbols of the zodiac appear, and if they touch her, then you lose a life. Floating in from the top of the screen are flowers, and your goal is to collect all of those. As you collect them, a field at the bottom of the screen will fill up, and when the field is complete, you advance to the next stage, which is a little bit faster. Also floating around the screen is Honey Princess, who's on a balloon. And in some of the game modes, a second player will be controlling her. If a sign of the zodiac touches Honey, then her balloon deflates and she starts falling. Milky will have to fly over and touch Honey to reinflate the balloon. If Honey hits the ground, then you lose a life. And if a flower reaches the ground, then it will blink for a few seconds. And if Milky doesn't pick it up, then she'll lose a life. Very rarely, about once per stage, a falling star will quickly move across the screen, and if you intercept that, then you get the ability to take out some of those astrological signs by running into them. And of course, this lasts until the music change ends. And that's the entire game. It doesn't even get particularly fast. Stay away from the edges where the zodiac signs appear, and you can play pretty much forever. Milky Princess is a real disaster piece of a cartridge. And I have to compare it to Sega's own attempt to appeal to women with Girl's Garden. That also had a girl as the protagonist, and a floral theme, but Sega didn't skimp on the game. It's actually one of the better games on the SG-1000. Milky Princess, on the other hand, feels like a bunch of guys got together and went, "What do chicks like?" The result is something that I'm dubious that anyone would like. Considering how rare games targeting women were in 1985, I found Milky Princess to be a severe disappointment. This really needed to be better.